The question is that this bill be now read a second time, and I call the member for Forrest.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. My constituents in Forrest and every Australian need to have confidence that when a Commonwealth department contacts them, it is actually that department doing the contacting. And if an individual or a group pretends fraudulently to be, whether it's Medicare, whether it's Centrelink, whether it's the ATO or the Department of Immigration or any other Commonwealth department, body or organisation, that person or group can and will be charged and it will be illegal. This will be illegal. That's what this law is about. So that the next time someone decides that they will send out a text messages, perhaps during, be it an election campaign or any other time, and deliberately impersonate a Commonwealth department, deliberately and knowingly scaring the most vulnerable people, that it will actually be charged, that individual will be charged for doing so. And those with malicious intent, or whether they are scammers, in fact, pretending to be a Commonwealth department. It will be against the law, once this law passes, to impersonate Centrelink, Department of Defence, whether it's the Australian Tax Office. When we consider that there are over 2.1 million aged pensioners in Australia, those people would be particularly worried to get the type of email or text that they received during the campaign. And it was really a dreadful time, very worrying for many people, Mr Deputy Speaker. This Labor's famous Medicare campaign deliberately impersonated a Commonwealth department, at the same time deliberately and knowingly scaring the most vulnerable people. It will be against the law once this law is passed, whether it is a scammer or those with any form of malicious intent. To impersonate, as I said, be it Centrelink, it could be Vets Affairs, it could be immigration. And it is really important. We saw graphically at the 2016 election this infamous Medicare campaign, thousands and thousands of text messages sent supposedly from Medicare, and of course they weren't. They were from the Labor Party. And one of the protections, why is this so important? Well, one of the great protections in our system of government is that when people come into contact with a government institution, they need to be able to have faith and have the confidence and trust that the people they're talking to or dealing with are in fact government officials. It is a really key part of the confidence in our democratic process. That's why this bill is so important. We do have laws already relating to impersonating a Commonwealth official, and this is an extension of that to impersonating a Commonwealth body. It covers the situation where it's not a Commonwealth official being impersonated currently, but an entire Commonwealth organisation as well. And we did see this, as I said, during Medicare, and it was very clear from those text messages, Medicare at the top, very clear, very misleading, very deliberately misleading. And it certainly was Labor who did so. So this bill will amend the Criminal Code Act of 1995. That's to safeguard the Australian public from misrepresentation and false statements purportedly made on behalf of Commonwealth bodies. And the Turnbull government, and I personally, really condemn the impersonation of Commonwealth bodies. And I see it as well with scammers, as well as we saw this was a giant scam and a giant con. We're committed to strengthening public confidence in communications from all government departments and bodies. This bill introduces new criminal offences, as they should be, and an injunction power to prevent people from impersonating a Commonwealth body. The measures will ensure that the Australian public, those pensioners and people on lower incomes and anybody that is likely to receive this type of message deliberately with an intent to convince them that it's a Commonwealth body, will have confidence that if it is that person, if it is that group, that they will be acting against the law. People need to know that and have confidence in the legitimacy of communications from government agencies, and it helps to safeguard the proper functioning of government. people shouldn't take what happened lightly, Mr Deputy Speaker. We haven't. That's why this legislation is here. It is essential to a well-functioning democracy that the public, the people in Australia, have absolute trust in the legitimacy of statements made by government agencies. And trust is inevitably eroded if people are able, with impunity, as we saw, to misrepresent themselves as saying they're communicating on behalf of a government or a government organisation or body without any authorisation. Accordingly, this bill introduces new offence to criminalise conduct where a person falsely represents themselves to be acting on behalf of or with the authority of a Commonwealth agency, like the Medicare campaign. For the purposes of the new offences, a Commonwealth body would be a Commonwealth entity, a Commonwealth company or any service, benefit, program or facility, it covers the broad spectrum, provided by or on behalf of the Commonwealth. The offences will capture false representations in relation to a broad range of government bodies and services, from the Attorney General's Department through to Centrelink and Medicare. And just think what else there could be that we could see this type of campaign running. Or a scammer could claim to be Regional Development Australia. Perhaps the Child Support Agency might be the next one, the Department of Social Services or Human Services. The list is significant. And we did see that disgraceful use of messages that really confused with legitimate messages from a Commonwealth during the 2016 election campaign. Those messages were sent out to people in the community, encouraging them to vote a certain way based on a falsehood. That's what it was. It took advantage of a loophole in the current law surrounding impersonating the Commonwealth or its officials. Pensioners receiving text messages about the government's policy on Medicare, and it was blatantly false. They were spread maliciously in order to achieve an electoral advantage. And this gap is being covered by this law. It is already a criminal offence to impersonate a Commonwealth official. This takes that even further. And I am particularly pleased, Mr Deputy Speaker, given the work I've done in the online space, that this will cover scammers as well. Because we frequently see scams where people purport they will send a false invoice pretending to be from the ATO. Well, this law will cover those people as well. So on today, that is Internet Safety Day, the people that are prone to this sort of behaviour better be aware that this law will cover you too, if that's what you're doing. So the bill introduces offences to ensure that the punishment reflects the person's state of mind in making the false representation. Where a person intends that or is reckless as to whether their conduct will result in or reasonably capable of resulting in a false representation, it will be punishable by up to 2 years' imprisonment. The amendments also create a new aggravated offence where a person falsely impersonates a Commonwealth body or service with the intent to gain, cause a loss, or influence the exercise of a public duty. The more serious and deliberate nature of this conduct warrants an increased maximum penalty of 5 years imprisonment. 5 years imprisonment, as it should be. An aggravated offence where a person falsely impersonates a Commonwealth body with the intent to gain, cause a loss, or influence the exercise of a public duty. They're commensurate with offences for impersonating a Commonwealth official, but the bill contains safeguards to ensure that neither of these offences unduly limits the freedom of expression, equally as important. The bill also enlivens the injunction provisions in the Regulatory Powers Standard Provisions Act of 2014, providing persons whose interests have been or would be affected by the false representation the opportunity to prevent such conduct through a court-issued injunction to stop it. Important, particularly online. The immediacy, the issues around the online space, it's immediate, it's global.
Important on election day too.
Very important on election day. It will enable affected persons to apply to a relevant court for an injunction to prevent conduct in contravention of the new offences in the Criminal Code. as I'm reminded. It's important to note that the purpose of this power is to enable affected people to act swiftly, as you need to, particularly online, and you saw that with the Medicare campaign. There needed to be an immediate and effective response. To prevent the conduct amounting to false representation. That's what we saw, false representation of a Commonwealth agency. Very cleverly targeted and unfortunately at the most vulnerable. Mr Deputy Speaker, these amendments are critical to protecting Commonwealth bodies from what is and will be criminal misrepresentation, and it should be. It should be. It should be against the law, as this law will make it, to misrepresent a Commonwealth agency or body. And it will ensure that the public, those people out there who elect us to this place, can have confidence in all communications, all forms of communication that comes from the Commonwealth Government. The people that live in our electorates take it very seriously when they get any form of communication saying it's from a government agency. They do take it seriously, and they need to have confidence that that's who it's actually coming from. And that's why this law is so important. We're committed to safeguarding the actual proper functioning of Australia's democracy. That's what this is about. It's not about anything else other than safeguarding our democracy, so that trust is so critical. Australian people need to have trust in the validity of communications from our Commonwealth bodies. After all, if you can't trust a Commonwealth body, who can you trust? That's what my people would say to me in this sense. They need to have that level of confidence, and we here are the guardians of that trust. That's why we take it so seriously, and we do, and I'm very pleased to be speaking on this bill. We will strengthen this law will strengthen public confidence in all such communications, and more importantly, or just as importantly, not more importantly, just as importantly, it'll ensure that those who deliberately deceive the Australian public are ultimately captured by the law. What a great result that will be. Mr Deputy Speaker, I commend the Minister for bringing the legislation to the House. It is important legislation, and I commend the bill to the House, and I'm pleased that my colleagues are here to support that endeavour.